Alright, so this is the gramática that starts on page 2 of your Mejor Amigo número 1. So first there's some vocabulario importante that you guys should know. The first thing is el sujeto, and this is the person or thing that's doing the action. And in English, that is the subject. So in the two examples given, the first one, Juan is walking. So the subject here is Juan. And in the second sentence, the dog barked. So the sujeto here is dog. Next up, el sustantivo is a person, place, thing, or idea. This one is not a cognate, but you might have already guessed that this is a noun. And last, el pronombre is any word that replaces a noun. This one's kind of a cognate. Maybe you could guess this is a pronoun. So, a subject pronoun, more specifically, is a word that replaces the subject of a sentence. Usually we do this so that we aren't just repeating ourselves over and over again, so we don't sound so repetitive. And let's look at an example here below. So we could say, if we're talking about John, we could say John goes to school. First, John studies Spanish. Then John eats lunch. But that sounds a little bit weird. We would usually say John goes to school. And then every other time that we say John, we could just replace it with he. So he, in this case, is an example of a subject pronoun. So the subject pronouns in Spanish, let's talk about this chart first. You're going to see this set up a lot, so I want to make sure that you guys understand how it's set up. Let me find the laser pointer thing so I can point to things. All right, so the left side of the chart is for all of the pronombres singulares. All the pronombres singulares. And the right side is for all of the pronombres plurales. All of the pronombres plurales. And then there are 3 rows to this chart. The first row is for primera persona. We would call this first person. The second row is for the pronombres de segunda persona. We would call these second person pronouns. And last, we have the pronombres de tercera persona, third person pronouns. So basically, if you have not heard of first person, second person, or third person, it's just a way to describe if you're talking to someone or talking about someone, or if you're talking about yourself. So anytime you're using primera persona, that is when you're talking about yourself. You could just be talking about you, one person, or you could be talking about me and other people, in which case that would be we for the plural form. And then second person is anytime that you are talking to someone. You're saying you. So we might have just talking to one person on the singular side, or talking to a whole group of people. Like if you were talking to all the kids in class and saying, you should check this thing out, that you would be plural. And then third person is when we're talking about people. So talking about he or she, or talking about what they are doing. So you're not talking to them, you're talking about them. So the pronouns in Spanish, to say I, we say yo. To say you, there's actually 2 different ways to say you in Spanish for the singular you. There's a formal and an informal. You may not know this, but English actually also used to have a formal and informal singular second person pronoun. you was actually the formal option, and thou was the informal option. But over the years, languages change and evolve, and now we don't use thou anymore in common day speech. We just use you for everything. But English did actually used to have formal and informal. Spanish still has it now, though. So the informal you is tú, and make sure you put an accent mark over the you. And the formal you, singular, is usted. Usted. We'll talk a little bit more in just a second about the difference between when you use the formal or when you use the informal. All right, for third person singular, we have he, which is él. And make sure that one has an accent on it too, otherwise it's a different word. And she is ella. Ella. Now, over on the right side, on the pronombres plurales side, first we have we, which is nosotros, unless it is a group of all girls. So if you are a girl and you're talking about other people that are also girls, like if you are on a soccer team, it's all girls, and you say we are going to go do this, then you would actually use the feminine form and say nosotras. So nosotras is used only when it's all female people. Nosotros is when it's all male, or it's a mixed group, some guys, some girls. All right, next up, for the second person plural pronouns, the segunda persona, we have two ways to say this. So let's actually do the you plural one first. So this one is ustedes. Ustedes. This is the most common one. It's used almost everywhere. Even though it looks like the even though it looks like the formal you, that doesn't actually mean anything, and for the plural one, it just means you all, or you guys. Now, you'll notice there's also a y'all. So the reason we chose that word, it doesn't specifically mean y'all, but it's another way to say a plural you, but it's very regionally specific. So just like y'all is something that's really only said in the South, this word is only used in Spain. Now, this word also can have a masculine or feminine form. So I'm just going to put the at symbol. The word is vosotros, but I'm going to put the at symbol at the end, and I recommend you do too, to remember that it depends if you're talking to a group of all guys, a group of all guys and girls, or you use the feminine one if it's a group of only girls that you're talking to. But this is only used in Spain. Only used in Spain, nowhere else. All right, and last, we have two ways to say they. The only difference is the gender. So they is the masculine form is ellos, and the feminine form ellas. So those are all of the pronombres de sujeto en español. So some quick cultural notes. Some of these we already touched on, but I wanted to make sure that you guys really get this. So when we're talking to people, when we're using the second person, we have to decide in Spanish if it's formal or informal. So tú is the informal option. This is the one that we use with friends or family. And then usted, the formal option, this is used with strangers or people in authority. So, also, as I said, when you use the second person plural, you all or y'all, you have to note the geographical distinction. So, vosotros or vosotras is used only in Spain, nowhere else. And ustedes is used in the other 20 Spanish-speaking countries. And a lot of the plural subject pronouns, that right side of the chart, we do have to consider the gender of the people that we're talking to or talking about. So if it is all females, then you use nosotras, vosotras, or ellas. Any other time, you use the masculine form. Even if it's 100 girls and one guy, you use the masculine form. In Spanish, it's not really a matter so much of like that one is better than the other or different. The gender neutral form is masculine in Spanish. So if it's all men or a mixed group of men and women, then you use the masculine form of these words, nosotros, vosotros, or ellos. So let's get a little practice now. So first, underline the subject in the sentences below, and then replace the subject with a subject pronoun and write your answer on the line. So looking at the example, we have Lola learns Spanish. So my subject here that I've underlined is Lola. And then on the right side, I'm going to replace the name with one of the subject pronouns. In this case, I'm going to say she learns Spanish. All right, so go ahead and pause the video now, complete the answers, and then come back and unpause the video to check your work. All right, so going through these, next up, Julio drinks juice. The subject is Julio. He's the one doing the action. And if I wanted to replace Julio with a subject pronoun, then I'm going to say he drinks juice. Next up, Julia and Carla skateboard. So the people doing the action here are Julia and Carla. So to replace that with a subject pronoun, I would say they skateboard. Next up, Carlos and I text. The people doing the action are Carlos and I. So when we replace that with the subject pronoun, we would say we text. Next up, Paco y Pablo practican deportes. Oh, now we're getting into Spanish. So the people doing the action, los sujetos, son Paco y Pablo. And since we're talking about two people, then we're going to use third person plural. So we're talking about more than one person. So it needs to be third person because we're talking about people, not to them. And it needs to be plural because there's more than one of them. So they are also both boys because both of their names end with O. So we're going to say ellos. Ellos practican deportes. Next up, mis amigos y yo jugamos al fútbol. So the people doing the actions here, los sujetos, son amigos y yo. Amigos y yo. So in this one, we're talking about something that I am doing, but I'm also talking about other people. So anytime you have yo, you're going to be in first person, but if there's other people, then it needs to be plural. So the first person plural is going to be nosotros or nosotras. Since amigos has the masculine form, then we should use the masculine form to match it, even if you are a girl. So, nosotros jugamos al fútbol. Next up, Lidia y Silvia montan en bicicleta. So the people doing the action here are Lidia y Silvia. And we are talking about more than one person, so we need to use third person plural. And Lidia and Silvia, I look at the end of their names, they both have an A, so that lets me know they're both girls. So we're going to use the feminine form of the word they. So ellas montan en bicicleta. They ride their bikes. And last, Antonio mira TikToks. Antonio is our subject. He's the one doing the action. And since we're talking about one person, about is third person, and one person is singular. So we're going to use the singular third person pronoun. Antonio is a boy, so we're going to choose él. Él mira TikToks. All right. Now, next up, we're going to do kind of something similar, but just with practicing the difference between talking to people versus talking about them. So, anytime that we are talking to people, that's always going to be second person. Segunda persona. Anytime we're talking about people, that is most likely going to be tercera persona. Now, there is one kind of tricky one, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Basically, if we're talking to people, we're using segunda persona. If we're talking about people, we're using tercera persona. All right, so if I am talking to Juan, I am talking to one person, so I need to use a second person singular pronoun. Now, we don't know if Juan is our friend or a stranger or our boss or the president or anything, so there could be more than one right answer. I'm going to write both of them. Here, it could be tú or usted. Tú or usted. All right. If we are talking about Juan, so third person, talking about one person who's a boy, then we would choose él. Next up, Elena y Juan. So second person, talking to Elena y Juan. We need second person plural because there's more than one person. Now, we also don't know in this example if we are in Spain or if we're somewhere else. So I'll go ahead and, just like before, I'll put down either of the correct answers. So you could just say ustedes. Or you could say vosotros. And the reason I chose vosotros is because the masculine form is because it's a mixed group of one guy and one girl. Now, if I'm talking about Elena y Juan, then we need to use third person, and there's two people, so third person plural. And just like before, we're going to choose the masculine form because there's a guy in this group, so ellos. Ellos. All right, next up. This is kind of the weird one. Actually, I don't know if I like this example. Juanillo. If you're talking to yourself. No, actually, I think it still fits. Let's just not do this one. I don't like this example, actually. All right. Next up, if we're talking just to Elena, so we're talking to one person. Now, we don't know if Elena, if we should use formal or informal. So again, I'm just going to put both of them down. If Elena is our friend or maybe our cousin, we could use tú. If Elena is a stranger or someone a lot older than us, we would use usted. And if we were talking about her, we would need to use tercera persona, singular. And Elena is a girl, so we would use ella. Next up, Maria y Elena. So if we're talking to Maria and Elena, then we would need to use segunda persona plural. So we have two options here. We could just say ustedes. Or if we are in Spain, we could say vosotras. And I'm choosing vosotras here because they are both girls. And then if I'm talking about Maria y Elena, like Maria and Elena scored a soccer goal last night. They did this. I need to use a pronombre de tercera persona plural. And they are both girls, so we're going to use ellas. And lastly, Dr. Martinez. If we are talking to Dr. Martinez, we're going to assume in this case that we want to be a little bit more formal, talking to a doctor. So we would choose the formal singular second person pronoun, usted. But if we're talking about Dr. Martinez, like sharing with someone something that he said to you, Dr. Martinez told me to do this, then we would use a pronombre de tercera persona, singular, and I guess we actually don't know if it's a man or a woman. So typically speaking, in Spanish, the masculine form is the gender neutral option. It's a little bit different in English, but in Spanish, that's how it works.